So Norwich City have confirmed that around 24% of the club will be made available by the allotment of new shares. Now what that means is that the shares people already have sort of been diluted in terms of their value because more shares have been created, and although the shareholders currently in the club will retain the exact number of shares they have, obviously more shares being available means they have sort of less of a stake in the club and less of a controlling say in how it's run, because they will have a smaller proportion of the club. What it means principally, and probably most importantly, is that Delia Smith and Michael Wynne-Jones see their shares in the club diminish to a value of less than 50% for the first time since they took majority shareholding back in 1997. So quite a big change for the football club actually, and although nothing has been confirmed in terms of who will be taking over those shares, the landscape has obviously shifted, and this obviously does mark quite a significant development in the financial situation Norwich City find themselves in. And with the ownership, there will be a lot of questions about what this could mean. Obviously Mark Attanasio's name will be in the mix, and it'll be no surprise to see him perhaps take those shares in future, but for now we don't expect anything to be confirmed in the short term. We just expect this to be a step that's been taken and to allow something perhaps in future. So obviously the name being linked most with taking up these shares is Mark Attanasio, and from how we expect things to pan out, it does look like that's the most likely possibility. He obviously took 15.9% of shares from Michael Folger, in the football club in I think September last year, when he was confirmed as part of the club's board of directors. And he's somebody who senior figures at the football club have spoken up in terms of what he can provide and the expertise he's already provided. He's obviously the owner of MLB franchise, the Milwaukee Brewers, and he's got a lot of experience there. And from the sort of senior figures that have spoken in the press recently, they've spoken about the impact that he's had and the expertise that he's brought over from having a successful franchise. And Milwaukee Brewers aren't too far away from what Norwich City are in terms of as a club. They are in a smaller city, sort of less of a history of being a big franchise, and they're not a franchise that's seen enormous amounts of investment, but through the use of data and analytics and clever decisions throughout Attanasio's time there, they've been able to work their way up the MLB ranks and actually find their way into the playoffs at times. So I think that's something that Attanasio is keen to do here at Carrow Road. And if he were to take these new shares that have been created, remember 24% compared to the 16% we know he's guaranteed to have at the moment, which is obviously a significant increase in what he owns. Now, what's important to say is that his 16% has actually gone down to around 12% because of the allotment of these shares, and because obviously everybody's percentage has been diluted. So if he were to take these shares, we would expect it to be at least 36% of the club that the American would own, and that would mean obviously a very significant sea change. Although he wouldn't have quite as much as Delia Smith and Michael Wynne-Jones at present, it's worth remembering he also has C preference shares, which can translate to 10% of the club, or the repayment of £16.9 million either in 7 years or upon the trigger of certain events. So certainly looks like Attanasio's in the frame. Nothing we can confirm at this stage, but we do expect him to take on those shares that have been created. What it does is relieve a lot of pressure for Norwich City. Obviously people will be aware of the £66 million loan published on the club's most recent accounts, and the pressure that creates is enormous. Obviously Norwich were hoping to be promoted this year, and it's still something they're hoping to do. It's still possible, certainly mathematically, but this probably removes a lot of the pressure to be able to do that, and gives them the opportunity to probably relax a little bit and to relieve the tensions at quite a difficult financial time for the club. It might mean that indirectly there's more finances available for things like transfers or training ground redevelopment, which we know is high up on the agenda of Norwich City at the moment. So it frees up the club to play with their finances a little bit. Quite the extent of the impact that has in future, we're yet to see, but you'd imagine it would just relieve that stress and relieve that pressure, because that question has been on the minds of Norwich City fans since it was published really that they'd taken out those loans. There has been a worry over what that could mean for the club, especially given the sort of financial problems the club have faced in recent years before Stuart Webber's arrival, and previously sort of before David McNally's arrival as well. So I think that's something the club were keen to avoid. They were keen to avoid finding themselves in significant debt with no way out, and this probably frees them up to do that a little bit, while also bringing Mark Attanasio potentially more into the frame as somebody who looks like he could have a significant impact on the club in the future.
I think it's a good idea because it's going to strengthen investment in the club, whereas Mr. Attanasio bought another director's shares before. That wasn't money coming into the club, so this is money coming into the club which should be welcomed. We just have to hope that whoever they're allotting them to, and we assume it's our American investors, that they're doing it with the best of intentions, and that the good of the club is the paramount interest of all of us.
Well, I think whilst nothing is confirmed or guaranteed, but it's assumed by many that Mark Attanasio is behind purchasing more shares in the club. Financially, it's a big help to the club. It avoids greater debt. It's a form of investment, and I, for one, have always remained quietly confident of this path the club is taking, because Delia and Michael are backing it, and they're the people that got this club through the last 25 plus years, through thick and thin. The club is in their hearts, in their bloodstream. They're not going to do or agree anything that is going to be harmful to this going forward. So I think we all should take confidence from that, and it just leans towards a safe and reasonably successful future for the club.